Hello and welcome to another episode of Aloe and Ace podcast. I am the allosexual Skylar.
And I'm the asexual Jessie.
Jessie, it is episode 2020.
I know, I can't actually believe that. Like that's crazy to me. How does that feel to you? Is that crazy to you?
No, but it's good.
I mean, I think we have probably close to 25 hours of podcasting episodes.
At least, probably.
What have we talked about for nearly 25 hours?
Well, some people might agree with that statement.
Maybe.
Before we get too much into it, we just want to remind people that this is a podcast that deals with sexuality, specifically asexuality. And so there are topics that we will discuss that could be triggering to people, such as self-harm, SA, sex generally speaking. And so if you find yourself feeling uncomfortable or it's triggering you, we ask that you just stop and find a way to feel safe.
Right. And also we want to put a big disclaimer out there that we are not professionals.
Not even close.
Not even close. Ask me in about 5 years and then maybe, we'll have a different answer. But right now we're not professionals. We are simply talking about our experiences that we are having together and other things that we've observed.
And with that said, we love having people reach out. I know that there's probably a couple people that I need to respond to. So if you hear this, I'm sorry. But with that said, you can find us on most socials and we would love to hear from you. You can also email us at aloeandacepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, and we also have a phone number.
I don't know why you keep saying it. Now I have to look it up.
I know, but we did get our first text message, right?
We did, yes.
And that's very interesting, right?
Sure.
Yes. What if where is it posted?
It's posted on episode 18, pretty sure.
Okay, but we need it posted somewhere just all the time. So we can say, hey, we have a phone number on our website.
We could put it on Instagram or something.
Oh, that seems scarier than the website.
I don't know. Anyway, with that said, if you're in the U.S. or if you don't care and you want to message us or leave a voicemail, the phone number is area code 1-385-645-3651.
There you go. Thank you, Skylar.
Yes, you're welcome, Jessie.
Please give us a message. Okay.
Jessie, how's it going?
I'm trying not to make the pause too long.
Well, instead you said,
Yeah. Right in this very moment, I feel pretty happy. The last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind for many reasons, but here we are. And it was just a little bit of a roller coaster for different reasons. Reasons that it's a little too soon to get into, I guess. But all of that to say, everything's really great between Skylar and I. We've had a lot of interesting conversations over the last 2 weeks, especially going off of the previous episode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the things we talked about in the previous episode are heavy things. They're not just simple little light conversations. So, yeah. But right now, here in this moment, I kind of feel like we're through that interesting ride. And we might get on another ride, and that's fine. But right now, we've just gotten off the ride, and it's like, okay.
People are like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
There's a few bigger things going on in life right now. And a couple of them are just a bit personal that we might be able to open up later down the road. Don't you think?
Again, people are going to be like, okay, are you dying?
If you message us, then we'll talk to you about it. How about that?
Nobody's dying.
Nobody's dying.
And nobody's close to dying.
No.
As old as I am, I'm not close to dying.
No, you're not. How are wait? Oh,
I almost got out. I almost got away from it.
you almost did. Skylar, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking.
Do you ever feel like you might not be answering that honestly?
Nope.
Really? It's always just, I'm doing well.
I'm doing well. Can't complain.
Do you feel like you literally can answer that way all the time?
Probably.
Interesting.
Well, I don't. The thing is, here's the thing.
Okay.
I don't. Well, one, I don't complain about a lot of things, but I wouldn't say that I have a lot of things to complain about, even if I did. I don't know what that eyebrow lift.
Yeah.
But I think that probably whenever we're recording, one, there's not a lot of things that we fight about or get upset by. So outside of general work stuff, I don't really have anything to complain or that would make me feel a certain way.
That's good. I'm happy for you.
What would you like me to say?
No. I know that we've had comments in the past that,
Like you and I have, or people have made comments?
People have made comments regarding the podcast where they think that you might not be, I don't know, saying how you really feel about something, or you're letting me have all the spotlight.
Well,
of all the feelings.
I really don't have anything to complain about, so.
That's good.
I will say, like, the weekend was not the most fun. I had some interesting, like, tinnitus / vertigo stuff going on because of my neck. But, I mean, so that was like a bummer, but that doesn't affect my whole week by any means. So I'm good.
Well, good. Very good.
Yeah.
So, Skylar, do you have any asexual sparks of the week to bring up?
I know you do.
I do.
I'm sure you do. Well, do we want to talk about the clarifications?
Yeah, I guess that's a spark in itself, right?
Yeah, so we have a good friend who was listening to the previous episode, and she said, I don't, when Skylar was trying to explain some things, it didn't seem like what you were trying to portray was being portrayed. It sounded like you were still against, or it was still a negative thing. So when we were talking about the hand being open to a degree, and one of the last things that Jesse said was, I would say, see, I knew it. And because we were talking about the sunk cost
fallacy.
And Jesse said, see, I knew it. I knew that there was some sunk cost associated with it. And so it still sounded negative in the sense of like, I knew it.
If Skylar was to have a situation come up and come to me and say, I'd like to pursue this situation that's come up, then I would say, I knew it.
And I don't know if I didn't catch it. And because if I would have caught it, I probably would have said something along the lines of, so you would still feel that it was I knew it and it was negative. I think I would have pushed more.
Right. I was surprised to hear the feedback as well, because when I was saying it on the podcast, I didn't mean it in a negative way, and I still don't. I still feel that I would be like, I knew that would likely be the case, and that's okay. I guess maybe in the last episode I didn't say, and that's okay.
Yeah, it wasn't portrayed that way at all.
Yeah. Was I just being a little bit sassier?
It wasn't even that it was sassy. It was just that it was a see and I knew it kind of a thing. And so
it's really important to say, and that's okay, I guess, right?
I mean, if that's how you really feel, sure.
I do feel that way because I feel like I know that you're a sexual person.
And I guess
so how can I...
Before we get further into this episode, if you I mean, you should start with episode 1, but if you haven't, if this is literally the first time you're listening to this, then you're not going to understand episode 19, which is all the monogamies. So talking about, what is ethical monogamy and what is ethical non-monogamy, and Jesse talking about opening the hands a bit and having less control, or, what does that look like in a relationship?
Right. So since we recorded the last episode, we have had
even more discussions.
Yeah, we've had so many discussions about what this means to have a closed hand, what it means to have a completely open, like flat hand, and what's the in between exactly, and how do we actually feel about this, and why do we feel the way we feel?
And I think a lot of it has to do with, if you look at society, not even society, but just human nature, and looking at why we are the way that we are. And this idea, we talked about this, and like I said, the ace couple, they did an episode on like what is actually cheating, because one person, it might be one thing, and to another person, it could be totally different. So who defines what that even looks like? So who defines what a relationship is? Who defines what a marriage is? And we look at a lot of rules that we have in place in society are there because of fears.
Yeah.
And so I'm afraid that if I let, it just seems like a permission thing. Like if I let you talk to another person, there's that fear that you might fall in love with them
and run away.
And then, so in order for me to prevent that from happening, I have to control you, and you don't get to talk to other people, and you don't get to fall in love.
But don't you think that the interesting thing is, don't you think that actually hurts the relationship so much more to be so tightly closed? Like, why are we so insecure that we can't even handle a conversation happening at a party or something?
And that's where,
right?
And that's where we were trying to look at with the previous episode of, well, where does that line end? Is it just sex? Is sex the only thing that is worthy of opening a marriage for because there's a lack of? Or can there be anything? And does it even have to be a lack? Does there have to be a lack for someone to want to have more relationships? And we can certainly go down the rabbit hole of polyamory, but most people, I don't feel, are polyamorous to their core. And so we're not even talking about this idea that people have to, just because there is trust and what that means, and because there is an open hand and what that means, doesn't mean that anyone has to go do anything with that information.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting for you and I. One of the conversations that was sparked between us was talking about when we go to parties ourselves, the two of us. And you and I are very cheeky. We are very flirty. We just are. We're both pretty outgoing. I mean, I'm very outgoing. You're pretty outgoing yourself. We don't have this hand tightly closed where we can't talk to other people at a party, but I do know that people do have that in place.
Yeah, I mean, there's been parties where, I mean, you spent almost at least an hour, I would say, talking to a guy.
Yeah.
Like pretty close to him, face to face, and you had a hour-long conversation.
Yeah, and it's going to be juicy as well. Like, it's going to be meaty in some way. Like, it's not just surface level stuff that I tend to bring up. And so it's like this thought of, we were sitting here talking about this over the last 2 weeks, and the conversation was, well, we don't feel threatened by that at all at parties. Having that be the case, having us be a bit cheeky, pretty jokey with others, and having whatever conversations we'd like to have.
Yeah, there's never been anything where someone like an outsider would look and be like, oh, there's some lines being crossed. Like, you didn't go into a separate room alone with this person.
No, but
there's no kissing happening.
Right. What we're talking about mainly is the attention that's being given to somebody else, right?
Yep.
And we understand that can feel quite uncomfortable for other people in relationships. They get uncomfortable if their partner is giving a lot of attention to somebody. So it really was about dissecting that. That's never bothered us. We've always accepted that we're just talkative people and we like to have deep conversations. And when we kind of strike a good vibe and flow with somebody, then we'll sit there and give them a lot of attention. So where does it start to get uncomfortable? And is it only uncomfortable because that's what we have been taught to believe it should be? We've been taught to be possessive or whatever, right? Does it actually have to be uncomfortable?
We actually, this will be probably interesting to some of the listeners. So back in the day when I went through the police academy, we talked about...
Wait, is that the interesting thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk about like if you're in a position where you're having a struggle with someone and you're taking a weapon from them, they likened it to children in a sandbox fighting over a toy. And you want to keep that object as close to your body as possible because you have the control. When you have the gun, the knife, whatever, as close to your body, you can turn and pivot. And if it's close to your body, it typically means that it's not as close to the other person's body. So you're at a better advantage of taking that away. So kids in sandboxes, like, they automatically have that this is my toy mentality, and don't, and they rip it close to their body and turn.
Right, but how do we as humans step away from treating other humans like a toy?
So that's what I'm saying is I think we're taught this, or at least it's even instinctually there from a young age. And so is it a matter of like going against even some inherent things?
The problem I have is that I do think there's some instinct at play there of what's mine is mine. But what frustrates me is treating humans like that.
Exactly.
Like, autonomy is so important.
And that's one thing that they talked about as well on the Ace Couple podcast episode. And we've talked about this ourselves where, I've even brought it up with our friends and I'm like, okay, but autonomy is great, but when it starts affecting your partner, then there has to be some ownership to that.
Right. Okay. But here's the difference.
Well, what I'm saying is they brought that up. So it's like, if I was into skydiving before you and I were in a committed relationship, and then all of a sudden we're in a committed relationship, that skydiving, which beforehand only affected me if the chute didn't open, now it affects you, and now it affects our children, now it affects lots of things. So my autonomy to go skydiving whenever and however I want, if I want to base jump, if I want to jump off a bridge, top of a building where there's inherent danger, especially if you're base jumping, does my autonomy still count, or are now there other things that should be played into that autonomy? Well,
I think what really gets pulled into that should be around is thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
If you are being thoughtful, I think that you and your partner can still have autonomy as long as people are being thoughtful and honest.
And that's the biggest thing, I think, where most issues come from is the fear.
Right. So what it came down to over these discussions over the last 2 weeks was it's not an open hand completely flat, and it's not a completely closed hand. It's like a little cupped hand that isn't pursuing anything, right, actively, but we're just letting things be. And if there's some interesting thoughts that come into play or an interesting situation that naturally comes about, then we have made an agreement to actively and honestly talk about things with kindness and curiosity and love and respect, right?
Yeah, and this isn't just for me. This is for any situation that we're in.
Right, exactly.
And it's more so about having the comfort and the ability to be open with your partner and knowing that you can talk to them about anything without them freaking out.
Right. It's almost like there is comfort in knowing that Skylar will come to me with anything. And then we can figure out a creative way forward. And when I say creative, I say that because I feel like it opens up a curiosity mindset of it might not be, what you thought it would be. It might not be what society would think that you would choose to do to work through this interesting thought or situation that's come up. But you're willing to be creative with it and look at the different paths that you can go.
I do think there is an asterisk still that we had from, the previous episode where you don't need me coming to you every day talking about how much I miss sex or something.
Yeah.
Like there's a thoughtfulness on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's not I can come to you to complain every day about something like missing sex. That's not what we're referring to.
No, we're saying, I'll give you an example. And this is kind of a vulnerable example, but we're going to go there a little bit like we usually do. You have all heard by this point that Skylar and I have definitely put ourselves in different situations over the last 6 years that have really tested the boundaries of things. Definitely when I was trying to fix myself, in quotation marks, there's a lot of interesting feelings that can come through by putting yourself out there in the ways that we did, in the ways that I did. And so over the last 2 weeks even, there were some interesting feelings that surfaced relating to something that happened 2 years ago. And these feelings that surfaced, they were serious. They're not just easy, run-of-the-mill, hey, want to pour a bowl of cereal or something? Like, no. This is serious stuff that needs to be worked through. And it came through in the most odd way to have it surface. Right, Skylar?
Yeah. And I mean, it could also be, in situations we've been in where if I've gotten closer to someone and I had developed feelings in that closeness, then it's kind of difficult for your partner to then just be like, well, you need to end that and get over it.
Right. Especially if in our case, these interesting feelings that surfaced, you were just as much involved with putting ourselves out there in the way that we did as I was. And so it naturally wouldn't be okay for you to be like, well, you need to shut down those feelings. Well, excuse me, you were a part of these feelings surfacing.
And we do see that a bit in open relationships of various kinds, including and not limited to polyamory, where all of a sudden you have both people who have decided to enter into this type of living, and then one person decides, oh, I don't want to do that anymore.
But you've already gotten attached
and
to
I
somebody.
Also don't want you to do it anymore, but you have 3 different partners that you're involved with.
Or
so
even just one.
Or even one. So is it really fair for me to say, sorry, you have to cut that all off with everybody and not be with them, even though you have?
I personally do not think that that's okay to have all these green lights be given between each other, get close to someone, get attached to somebody, and then someone just can veto a person. Like,
I do think that there are situations where if someone is being toxic, there's, you should be able to have an open discussion about red flags possibly that you're seeing.
I can see that. I think that that's completely appropriate.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing here, though, is I think Skylar and I have come to a place with this cupped hand theory where it's not totally closed, it's not totally open, but what it is open to is open and honest and loving communication. And that's what it's really all about. And this has been happening for the last 6 years between us.
Yeah.
Like, we have been so brutally honest with each other over the last 6 years. But through the honesty, I think because we approached it with kindness, thoughtfulness, curiosity, love, we've been solid. It's been solid.
And there has been things that I've had to work through on my own with like insecurities and we talked about that in the earlier episodes of this podcast where I thought I could be the problem. And so it was a threat if Jesse was talking to certain people and those certain people were trying to make a move or do whatever because maybe it is me and maybe I am the problem. And even though the rest of our relationship is good, what if she finds someone that she just enjoys a lot more than me?
So let's dissect that a bit more. Okay, so say I find someone that I enjoy a lot more than you. Then what?
Then you leave.
Realistically, though, should you be with somebody that's found something else with somebody else? Like, should you still want to be with me even if I'm like, no, I don't want to be with you anymore?
Well, no, not necessarily.
I know that's hard.
I do think that there's a level, and this goes for everybody. And I don't want to bring up like, any big preacher people, but but there is a preacher person who is pretty world famous, and him and his wife, they talk about leaving the 80 for the 20. And when you find that 20 with someone else, sometimes you can think that 20 is actually 100. And so you leave the 80 that you have with your partner seeking that 20 only to realize that they only fulfill 80% also. And so
or worse, 20.
Or maybe that 20 was the only thing they fulfilled. So don't leave the 80 for the 20. Now, I think the point of their story was water the grass on your own side of the fence, right?
And maybe if you have extra, you can water a few other places.
I don't think that's probably not what they're saying. They're saying make your own grass greener.
Wait. Let me just go ahead and clarify. That could mean lots of things.
No, it can't.
Yes, it can. We have several different types of relationships in our lives, right? So like, let's make sure that things at home are solid. And then we can also water the other relationships that we have, like really, really close friendships.
Sure, but that's not what they're referring to.
Was that a really asexual thing for me to just say?
Probably.
Okay.
But so a lot of this is like water your own grass, right? So we're not saying that at all. What we're saying though is that it can oftentimes feel like something to you is missing more, and I think you put more emphasis on it than you should. And that could be anything.
Well, especially if you get a spark of that thing that you might not have in your relationship, and then
it causes some NRE.
Yeah, some new relationship energy. That's what he just meant by that. Yes, it can be like, wow, this feels so good. Like, this is fun. But it's not. It's usually not what it seems.
Well,
it's just not.
Well, and going back to our trash TV that we watch,
super trashy,
like Love Island, where this guy and this girl in this heteronormative game show, if you will, they feel like they have this like massive spark, and like, I can't believe I've never felt like this about anyone in 12 hours. It's amazing. and then it like crashes down. But part of that is like that new relationship energy. When you do have an initial spark with someone, it's easy to look at that initial spark and make it larger than it is.
Yeah.
And so when there is what is perceived as a lack in your relationship, and all of a sudden you meet someone and they make you feel a tingle or a butterfly, or they make you feel something, it could be easier to perceive that as something larger than it really is. Where if you stepped back a little bit and you went, okay, why am I feeling this way? Well, because it's someone showing interest in me, and that feels good.
And you know what else, though, with that? I know this can be scary, but I think acknowledging that it feels really good can go a long way, too. Like, you acknowledge, like, hey, this feels really good. And then you go a little bit deeper and say, why does it feel so good? Right?
Well, and for a lot of people, it's like, well, I've been in a relationship for X amount of years and no one's ever looked at me this way or talked to me, or I've never been asked out. I've never had someone ask for my number. And so all of a sudden someone asked for me for my number, and I'm like, oh, I still got it.
Right. So do you think it just stops there? Because what I just thought of directly when you just said that was, you know, you said, oh, no one's looked at me like that in a long, long time.
Outside of your relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, outside of your relationship. Because the thing that I just thought of in my head was that, well, okay,
you got some work to do in your house. Like,
no. We're at a party or something and you have someone give you sex eyes. I don't even know what that means entirely, but we all know it's real. Don't act like you don't know that that's real.
Undressing me with their eyes.
Exactly. So, whoa, these sex eyes feel real nice right now.
I like your sex eyes.
Why do these feel so nice, Skylar? Why does this feeling feel so nice?
Because that's not how Jessie looks at me.
Yeah.
She doesn't give me sex eyes.
No sex eyes here, baby. So then what's the next thought, though? What's the next thing in your head to do? You say, well, this is why it feels good. And then what, Skylar?
Crisp high fives and we go our way.
I'm pointing this out because I feel like it's powerful. It's powerful
but
to
also,
experience something that you aren't usually experiencing, and it's a pleasant feeling.
But that also doesn't mean you have to act on it either.
No, but like, I think it's good to sit in and be like, okay, this feels good. Why does this feel good? Well, it's a different experience than I usually have. Okay, do I need to do anything about this?
See, and you went that route of like someone's giving you sex eyes. The route I was going was more of like a not being ignored, or like,
oh, if someone is typically like, kind of ignored in their relationship or something?
Like this, I'm being seen for the first time, or I'm being seen and I forgot what that feels like, then you probably have some work to do at your house. Like, you and your partner need to figure out how to get that back if that's missing, if it's like a normal thing that should exist in relationships. And I use normal not in sex way. I'm using normal in the way of like mutual respect and compliments and, you know, flirtiness and stuff like that. But
right. So here's the thing. We're sitting here touting this like cupped hand thing. What it really comes down to is just being thoughtful and honest with your partner, and knowing and accepting that they can come to you at any time and talk to you about something interesting that's kind of come up.
But I do think that if we went to a party, let's say the next bigger party we go to, if all of a sudden I'm like really being out there, then you would probably be like,
oh, that's interesting. We just had this cupped hand situation talk, and now you're really out there. Skylar, seems like something interesting is going on in your head. Would you like to talk about it?
Sounds like you're turning this natural thing into like a actually pursuit.
Into a pursuit.
Yep.
And there is a huge difference between just letting things flow and pursuing.
Yeah.
Right? That's interesting. So we're sitting here talking about like, this is a really great way to go about it, is to live in honesty and kindness, right? Your partner knows that they can come to you, you can go to them. But how do you actually get to that point?
Well, and that's,
right?
35 minutes in, we like the main part of this episode, I would say, or the main theme is sloppy versus clear agreements.
Yes, we have clear agreements and we have sloppy agreements, or we have no agreements.
And we actually had our own little discussion, if you will, this weekend about, even Jesse and I having sloppy agreements on certain things with the house, and how we want to like change that and make clear agreements.
Right. So a clear agreement is something you come up with, something that needs to be done, right, by yourself or with your partner or by your partner. And if you've made a clear agreement, then they clearly know what is being agreed upon. And usually there is a timeline of sorts that's happening, or a date, a due date, if you will. And you make sure that you understand all the details of the agreement being made. A sloppy agreement is like, yeah, I'll get to it. Or, yeah, I promise I'll try. But there's nothing more to that. And when you make sloppy agreements, things tend to fall apart or get pushed back and back and back and back and back.
So we wanted to discuss this with, what does that look like with maybe a relationship that is kind of rocky,
right,
where the asexual partner has recently come out to their partner and things are not in the greatest spot.
You're not going to feel like you can go to them and just be super raw and real and honest if you haven't established that kind of cadence and communication. So where do you start?
And where, they probably can't come to you either and discuss
it's usually
sort of
reciprocated.
And so one of the things that we've talked about, or one of the things that we're seeing a lot on, the asexual subreddit, is where a partner who is the allosexual doesn't really understand much about asexuality, and they say that they'll look into it, but what does that even mean? What's the end goal? What's the point of them even looking into it? What do you want to accomplish?
Like for me, it's like, if they don't want to do any of that, then it's like, why are you with me?
And so how would someone make a clear agreement to learn more about asexuality?
Okay, so given the example that you said, that you've recently come out as asexual.
Like, why would you, as an asexual partner, want me as your allosexual partner to understand more about asexuality? Why not just tell me?
Because I feel that there's a difference between me telling you and you seeking it and understanding it in your own personal way of getting the information.
And also, it makes it so that it's not just a singular instance. Because some people think, oh, you're not really asexual. You're just telling me that so that you don't have to have sex with me.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely something that happens.
And so a clear agreement would be like, can you listen to this podcast by next Friday? And then it becomes a yes or no thing. And if they say no, well, why don't you want to?
Yeah, why aren't you able to listen to this 45-minute podcast that I really think could help us?
Well, I just don't want to.
Then that becomes a problem.
So what you're telling me is that you don't care about our relationship or me as a person, because I'm telling you that I'm asexual.
And this is really
You're
important.
telling me that you don't understand what asexuality is. You think I'm making it up. And so you're not willing to listen to this so that you can have more understanding of this thing you don't understand.
Right. So that's the thing. I think we have had the question come up lots of times where it's like, well, how long do I give my partner to get on board? Right? I think it's hard to put time frames like that in place, but if they're not even willing to take baby steps and you're trying to make clear agreements with them so that you can get on the same page, I just don't think you deserve to be put through that over and over again. There is no reason why somebody shouldn't be able to take some baby steps for your relationship.
Yeah, I think that if the end goal is to have a happier relationship, then each partner should be coming forth to work on themselves and work on their relationship to make it better. And if a person is not willing to do that, then that means that they're not willing to work on their relationship.
You know what? It goes both ways. So you have the asexual coming to the allosexual saying, I am ace. And the allosexual is like, what the hell is that? And you can describe it in your own perceived way, right? And what you know. It's not going to be as impactful as them discovering things for themselves with it.
Yep.
However, the asexual can also do their side and their homework. Why they might be reacting, why they themselves might be reacting to certain situations, but also why the allosexual might be reacting in this way or that way. Try to put yourself in their shoes to the degree that you're able to, because that needs to happen as well. As an asexual, we don't really know the allosexual experience, right?
Well, and also you're not necessarily the quote unquote victim. So there's still there's work on both sides. It's not the allosexual partner didn't make you typically get into the relationship and didn't make you pretend to be allosexual or not understand your sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a lot of things that happened in your life that made it so you didn't understand who you were. And you're not a victim to that. You're
not a victim to them.
You just didn't understand. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so once you know everything and you figure out who you are
at a basic level,
level, it's not about coming to your allosexual partner as this victim and saying, poor me, I didn't know I was this, but it's about saying, hey, I'm understanding who I am. This is who I am. Unfortunately, society, religion, have all put these pressures and things that have been put on me to not understand myself fully. Now that I understand myself fully, this is where I'm at, and this is where I want to be, and this is what I see my relationship with you looking like. These are the boundaries that I'm setting to help keep myself safe, not as a victim, but as just a human being. And then the allosexual partner also needs to figure out all that stuff. How have I, contributed to, this in society? How am I pushing these ideals?
What kind of partner do I want to be moving forward?
Yeah. How can I be a better person? What does that look like? What do I need to work on as a person to be a more supportive, loving partner?
Right. Am I actually okay in this relationship with what it's seeming to be looking like?
And also, I'm not a victim. You didn't, and again, there are situations where someone did know that they were asexual and they got into a relationship and tricked the person, but I would say that's far more uncommon.
Yeah.
But I am also not a victim. Jessie didn't know that she was asexual.
I do think it's quite common for the allosexual to feel like they're a victim of this. I really do.
I agree. And so I think that there's a lot of anger that can happen on both sides, and it's about coming together and not blaming, each other, but figuring out, is this something that we want to work on? Is our relationship something that we want to continue working on and make better?
Yeah.
And how does that look like, and how can we make that better? And in doing so, we need to make clear agreements to discover and to work on ourselves, to work on, aspects of knowledge and understanding. And
don't you think that education is key here as like the first step? Excuse me. As a first step, don't you think it's the first step?
I'd say communication.
Well, communicating that this is what's happening, sure.
Well, communication is key. Like that, being better at communicating with your partner is the first step.
Right. So
knowledge is the second step.
Yeah. So I guess coming to a clear agreement that you are going to work on communicating. So that could mean, hey, twice a week, I want to have these check-ins with you, and I want to have deeper level conversations with you to see where we're at and how we're feeling with things. Like, start small. Make it a half hour twice a week. Make it a half hour once a week if you need to.
And how do you make it feel like it's not one-sided? Like, if you as the asexual partner are coming to me and asking me to make a clear agreement to listen to a podcast, and we're not like this, we're not saying like for them to listen to our podcast specifically. We're saying just name anything, like reading
a chapter in this book,
reading the Ace book by Angela Chan, like whatever that looks like.
I think what it has to be is it has to be something where it's like, I am going to write down a few things that really stood out to me, and you can write down a few things that stood out to you, and then we can bring them together and talk about it. Like, there has to be action happening in an equal amount on both sides, pretty close to an equal amount, I'd say. Yeah,
it shouldn't be a thing where the allosexual partner feels like you're just giving them a bunch of homework and there's nothing on your side that you need to do.
You have homework as well.
And we also see this a lot on the asexual forums. There's a ton of people, who are like, am I asexual? I like masturbating. Mm-hmm. Am I asexual? I like this. So there's a lot that you yourself need to do as an asexual person to figure out exactly what that means to you. And part of that is going to be doing your own knowledge and your own research and your own thinking about different aspects and trying to figure yourself out clearly. And again, going back to boundaries, like, you have to figure out what your boundaries are and what that looks like, and then communicate that with me.
And your partner should be, your allosexual partner should also be thinking about what their boundaries are and communicating them as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, to kind of wrap this up for now, I think what we'd like our listeners to do is kind of take a step back and examine what clear agreements you have already, what sloppy agreements you have, what non-agreements you have, and what clear agreements you can make.
And also looking at, what is the fear in your relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so I guess there's 3 things. The first thing is, if you are having trouble in your relationship, then coming up with a communication plan. I know that sounds weird, but I promise you it'll be worth it. So once a week, you say, hey, I'd love to have like a more in-depth conversation, or whatever it looks like for you.
TV is off, phones are put away.
Yeah.
Like, it's one-on-one.
You go sit out on the porch and hang out with each other and have some real good conversation. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is what I just said about clear agreements, non-agreements, and sloppy agreements. What clear agreements can be made right now that can make a difference, even if it's a small one, right? And then the third thing is, and this can go back to the communicating, is talking about what you're scared of.
Which, episode 4 was about relationship fears.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to have those fears in your own mind and keeping those to yourself. It's another
Yes.
to actually talk about them with your partner.
It is so much scarier having them trapped in your head. I'm telling you what.
And I know that we do have some allosexual listeners. So what if you came to your partner and said, I'm afraid that if I came to you saying that I needed to open the relationship, that you would just leave me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it would have to be a thing where you as the asexual partner are saying, oh, so you want to open your relationship? Is that what you want to do?
That's so great. Wow. Look at you go. I knew it. I knew it.
Instead of saying, you know,
let's
whatever.
talk about this. Why do you feel that this would be a path that you'd want to take? What does this look like to you?
Or why do you feel like I would leave you?
Yeah. Just, I know that that's a big one. That's obviously a big scary.
I'm not saying maybe you don't have to start with that, but I think that that's a common one is like, I'm afraid that, so Jessie could come to me and she has many times where she says, I don't feel like I'm ever going to be enough for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing for me to brush it off and be like, of course you're enough for me.
Knock it off.
Knock it off.
Stop being dumb.
It's another thing for me to be like, and why do you feel that? And what do you think?
What do you think's feeding that?
What do you think's feeding that? Have I done anything to cause that?
Yeah.
Well, you haven't. Okay, so is it society or is it what? And so there's just, it would be great if you could talk as a partnership, as a couple, and each list just one thing that you're afraid of and talk about it. Like talk it through.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even mean that you have to have a resolve. It could just be that you've talked about it. And you say, yeah, that is scary that if you came to me and said that you wanted to open, I'm not entirely sure how I would feel about that. I don't know what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Even saying that's interesting, I'd like to give that more thought is so much less threatening than saying, oh, really? That's how you feel, huh? Why would you want to do that? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You just saying, that's an interesting route to take. I'd like to kind of think about that a bit further and then allow your partner to think about it if they need to.
Well, and if you go, well, why do you think that I would leave you? Because of this, because of religion, because of society, because I'm confirming you're not enough, because, are you actually not enough? What does that mean?
Yeah. Something that's made me feel a bit bummed out is this thought of it's radical to be thoughtful and open and honest with your partner. Like that's the radical thing to do.
Yeah, that's
what?
the extreme. The extreme is being able to talk about your partner about anything.
That's the radical thing, to be able to talk about your partner about anything. And so I'm like sitting here having these conversations with Skylar and I'm like, let's have the conversations, every single one of them. Let's show that it can be done. So here we are having interesting conversations for everyone to hear all the time.
Well, and it's, with people who have been married for any length of time, but there's people married 20 years, just being like, what is one thing that I've done in the last 20 years that has made you not feel good enough? Like, I'm open to accepting what you're about to say.
Oof.
And I'm not going to argue it. I want to know. What can make me a better partner moving forward? What is something, Jessie, on the spot, that I have done in the last 6 years that has made you feel not good enough?
Well,
probably unfair because if you ask me, I'm going to be like, nothing.
Not good enough. I think that there is situations where Skylar tends to be incredibly logical, like the craziest level of logic. And so if you have someone that's decently logical, but has their moments of being emotional about something, if the emotional person, that's me, goes to the very logical person, that's Skylar, then it can make me feel like I am batshit crazy because your level of logic is so high. And so what I'm saying is it could make me feel like, oh, I must drive you nuts because I can't be so logical. I'm not enough. I don't have enough logic for you. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. And the way that is helped is by Skylar realizing when he's being extra logical and putting some validation in there. Right? He doesn't even have to understand it on a personal level, but validating, like, I can understand how you would be upset by that.
I can see how the way that I said that is making you feel this certain way, even if that's not how I meant it. It's
Right.
the way that it was said made you feel this way.
Or maybe something that's a bit more relatable is Skylar has notoriously been known to joke about sex a lot in the past. A lot. He's very quick-witted, and you add that with sexual humor, it's a lot.
That's not all I do quick.
No. Yeah, exactly. So I think that could have been something I could have picked out. I can't say more because that's something that you've recognized that could make me feel like I'm not enough.
Yep.
Easily. So, yeah, there's a lot of introspection to happen, you know? You have to be willing to hear it out and actually listen and take it in, even though it's really, really hard sometimes. I want to end this episode with another interesting spark moment that I just remembered, actually. And that is, somebody said recently, how do you know that Skylar, how do you know that you're just not just, maybe you're just only averse to Skylar and doing sexual things with Skylar, which is like, oof, ow, that doesn't feel good for Skylar to hear that. And when you break it down, the thing is I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be sexually averse to somebody else, with somebody else. But the thing is I don't have to test that or prove that to anybody at all because, one, I choose Skylar, and two, I don't actually even care. If I'm having feelings of, well, I need to prove to them that I'm averse across the board, that's not even following what I would actually want to be doing, because for me, sexual things are not important to me. So why do I have to go and show how I am sexually averse or not to everybody or just one person? That was another interesting thing that got brought up this week, right?
Yeah, and the one comment I had to that was, but do you feel like your persona would naturally come out because you would want to show this person a good time? So potentially you could go back into persona mode. Which
I disagreed with. I said, persona is dead. That specific persona of mine is dead. She's not coming back. However, there is a smaller, less powerful third cousin of that persona that would probably push me to the edge to try to start engaging in something like that. But then that persona would not be there holding my hand upon entrance. I know that sounds graphic, but it's true. And that can mean several things, just so we're clear, upon entrance.
Yeah, and also your gut reaction to thinking about sexual things
with other people. It's an instant no.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. With the person that brought this up, it was like, yeah, but my gut reaction is no. I don't want to do that at all. So why would I then put myself through that just to test if I'm averse to other people.
Yeah.
When my gut reaction, that would mean I was totally going against myself. But
Yep.
unfortunately, how many people out there do you think are put in a situation where they're like, well, maybe I'm not averse to everybody. Oh no, I want to be able to say, no, I am. I'm averse to everybody because I tried it with other people.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're putting themselves in dangerous situations.
Yeah, because there are people who are like, oh, I just thought, well, the next time will be better. The next time will be better.
Yep.
The next time will be better. And
Yep.
they've all been bad.
Yep. So anyway, all of that to say, you get to choose somebody.
Yeah.
First of all. And secondly, choose you. Honestly, choose how you're feeling. Actually look at how you're feeling and trust that. You typically know yourself deep down and you know your gut reaction to engaging in something or not. Don't let somebody else talk you into doing things that you don't want to be doing. Do what you feel good about doing. And that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. Please, everybody out there listening, think about reaching out to us and then reach out because we like you. We like all of you and we love hearing from you. Okay. What are you laughing at?
Nothing. We like you.
We really do. We honestly, we really
actually
do. You brighten our week so much when you reach out. So pick up that phone and give us a call or message us on Instagram or literally anywhere, pretty much.
It's true.
It's true. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll be talking to you guys next week. Let us know what comes up from listening to this episode.
Goodbye.
Bye.